There was also a study done in 2020 that found that as far as tech companies go, that Pornhub had the third largest influence on society, behind Facebook and Google, but ahead of Amazon, Microsoft, and Apple. So just an incredibly humongous company with a tremendous influence. And so, anyone who's investigating this industry will find themselves on Pornhub very shortly.
Welcome to the Superhuman Life. I'm your host, Frank Rich, and this is the only podcast in the world dedicated to helping men break free from the shackles of addiction through the power of faith and fitness. It is our goal with every episode to help you take back control and rebuild your body, mind, and spirit. And we do so by bringing you real and raw conversations with people just like you, aiming to find their place in this world while dealing with the everyday struggles and battles that we all face. Now, it is my belief that we were all created for a specific purpose. And if we can harness that belief or faith, then take control of our mind and body or fitness, then we can ultimately create the life that we've always dreamed about, our own superhuman life. I want to let you know how grateful and blessed I am to have you here with me today. Let's get on to today's show. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another very important and amazing episode of the Superhuman Life. As always, I'm your host, Frank Rich. And guys, I just want to tell you how incredibly grateful I am to have you here with me today. The fact that you're lending your time, whether you're watching on YouTube or lending your ear to take in today's conversation, means the world to me. And gonna just jump right in, guys, and just tell you what we're jumping into here today. So a lot of our conversations over these last 6 months or so, we've evolved and we've grown in the feedback, the response, the listeners, the subscribers, all the messages that I'm getting from the empowering conversations, the real-time strategies and tactics for you to step up and elevate your life, for you to step up and you to become the man or woman that you were created to be. It's just been absolutely a true blessing to have these conversations, to share these with you, and truly help you, inspire you, and help you find your purpose and calling in this life. And today we're going in a little bit different of a direction. Depending on how long you've been spending time with us, how long you've been a listener, follower of this show, that we've addressed the conversation and topic of human trafficking a handful of times, going back to January when I spoke with Sarah LaChance to stop the movement, and then going back into September, the initial conversation that I had with Natasha of Redefining Refuge. This is something that really rests on my heart, not just having these conversations, but being involved in the movements, being involved in raising an awareness. I've been fortunate to speak at Sarah's events. I've been fortunate to attend some of the events that Natasha has grown on. So it's always a true blessing and absolutely incredible to see people gather and support for the cause. And today is not any different. My guest has really been a leader for the last decade plus, going on 15 years. She's been combating and fighting this human trafficking. And really in the last couple years, her work, her organization has been one of the leaders in the movement to try to really pull down much of this evil that is just blatantly being shared on the internet. And that's what we're discussing today, guys. So fair warning, if you're listening with children, we get into some topics, we share some real stories of what's taking place. So this is not a conversation for children. And if you are sensitive to abuse, if you're sensitive to the conversations around abuse, not actually abuse, but the conversations and just words in general, this we do get into some deep dark stuff. So just a fair warning there, guys, that language, not that it hasn't been addressed before, and it's not in a destructive way, it's just in an awareness way. But we're going to be discussing, what's going on behind the scenes. What is Pornhub actually promoting with their videos, with their site? What is actually going on? What are the stories of some of the victims And how is Pornhub blatantly ignoring the fact that company, their parent company, Mindgeek, and their site is a site just promoting rape, promoting sex trafficking, and the profiting from it. So my guest today is Laila Mickelwait. Laila Mickelwait is the founder and CEO of the Justice Defense Fund and also the founder of the global Trafficking Hub movement supported by millions around the world. We say millions. They had a video that went viral last spring and has now been viewed over 33 million times. Laila and her team at Trafficking Hub have created a petition to have Pornhub removed, and this petition has been signed by over 2 million people. Like I said, she has been combating the injustice of sex trafficking for over a decade. She's a leading expert in the field. Her work has been featured in hundreds of news articles around the globe in outlets such as the New York Times, the New York Post, BBC News, CNN, Bloomberg, the AP, CNBC, Fox News, the Washington Post, the Washington Examiner, and many others. Like I said, she's an absolute leading expert, standing on the forefront of the lines, fighting this battle against evil, fighting this battle against these large, powerful organizations. You know, some of the things that we get into with Laila is her background and story. What led her to the point where she's now got, you know, this massive movement reaching millions of people. We dive into, you know, like I said, what's really going on behind the scenes. We talk about the ecosystem of MindGeek, and even if you don't feel that maybe some of the videos that you're watching are in fact of this rape, of this trafficking, how are you still fueling the problem? We talk about, you know, some of the leaders and top executives and how they know what's going on and how they're hiding and using false names and false identities. This was and then like I said, we definitely get into some of the victim stories, you know, talking about the truth of what is really going on. And more importantly, what can you guys do? So after hearing today's conversation, if there's something that you're looking to get involved in, I have all of Laila's information plugged down there below. Sign the petition, support Trafficking Hub, support the Justice Defense Fund. But once again, guys, I'm so incredibly appreciative of your time today. If this conversation spoke to you in any way, shape, or form, we talk about it with Laila in the podcast. The most important thing that we can do is continue to raise awareness. The most important thing that we can do is spread this message. So I ask you guys every single week, but I'm really driving this message home today. If today's conversation spoke to you, share this video on YouTube, share this podcast, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, wherever it is, with as many people as you possibly can, because maybe we don't have the funds to support it from a financial perspective. Maybe we don't have the time to dedicate to an organization, but we do have the power and the ability to share a video, to share a podcast. It just takes 2 clicks of a button, guys. And you never know what that person that you shared this with can potentially do. And that's one thing that Laila's story is a shining example of the power of one person. So incredibly thankful for you guys. Hope you enjoy the conversation. Hope it maybe educates you on some topics, raises awareness, and really looking forward to you joining the fight and us really playing a role in having the site taken down. So let's get on to today's conversation, guys. Pornhub exposed, profiting from child sex trafficking. Laila Mickelwait, thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome to the Superhuman Life.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to dive in here, and I appreciate you taking the time and addressing such a serious and needed conversation, like I was sharing with you before we hit record here. This is a topic that we've had a few guests on addressing. I know you've really been kind of at the forefront in the last year or so. I came across your video, which it's gone viral. I think I saw it's been seen 33 plus million times now, which is absolutely incredible. And when I saw it, it really opened my eyes, and it reminds me of this quote. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Albert Einstein quote: "The world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but rather by those that sit back and watch like nothing's happening." Or I think I misquoted that a little bit there, but it's something that has stuck with me really since seeing that video, and really once I really uncovered or was exposed to the link between the work that I do with helping men in porn and some of the things that you're addressing. So I want to give you an opportunity, Laila, to maybe share a little bit about who you are and what your organization, Trafficking Hub, and the Justice Defense Fund are doing. So can you kind of give us a little bit about your background and how you kind of got involved in this? I mean, no, I can't imagine anybody wakes up one day and say, "Hey, I want to take on, one of the top 10 largest websites in the world." So, kind of maybe walk us through a little bit about, what that story was and how you got here today.
Yeah, sure. So, I've been fighting this issue of sex trafficking for almost 15 years now. And I spent the last 9 years investigating and researching what I call big porn. So, we have such a thing as big tobacco, big tech. We have big porn. And I was specifically, looking at it from, so many angles. From the consumer perspective of how this was potentially harming children who are consuming this content, even as young as 8 years old, but also for those who are behind the camera or behind the screen. I think I talk about it in terms of those who are in front of the screen and those who are behind the screen, and the harms to both of those groups, specifically when it comes to children and victims. And so, looking at sex trafficking within the big porn industry, force, fraud, coercion, child sexual abuse, and assault and non consensual content. And anyone who's investigating and researching pornography will end up on Pornhub, because Pornhub, as of December 2020, was the largest and most popular porn site in the world. I think the stats in 2020 were that the site was receiving 47 billion visits per year. That's 130 million visits per day. That they had enough content in 2019 uploaded in that 1 year that it would take 169 years to watch if you watched it back to back. Massive site. They call Pornhub the 10th most trafficked site in the world as of last year. There was also a study done in 2020 that found that as far as tech companies go, that Pornhub had the third largest influence on society, behind Facebook and Google, but ahead of Amazon, Microsoft, and Apple. So just an incredibly humongous site company with a tremendous influence. And so, anyone who's investigating this industry will find out, find themselves on Pornhub very shortly, as I did. And what I discovered, what millions of people already knew, is that all it took to upload content to the world's most popular porn site was an email address. That in under 10 minutes, anyone around the world could anonymously upload a sex crime, a crime scene, really, to the world's most popular porn site with no verification of age of those who are in the video, making sure they're not children, no verification of consent, to make sure these are not trafficking or rape victims or revenge porn victims. And because of that, the site was infested with videos of the real rape, trafficking, abuse, assault of countless victims. And so that's kind of how this emerged. And then from there, I felt an obligation to make this information known to the world. And so I wrote an op-ed, and from there, received a lot of feedback where people were shocked and horrified, because Pornhub has presented itself to the world as, this company that, does things like clean the ocean campaigns and save the bees and breast cancer awareness, and they donate masks for coronavirus, and they have snow plows with their logo, like plowing snow in Boston for the people, and doing all these things. And so people were under this deception that what they were seeing on Pornhub was actually legal vetted content, when in fact, in so many cases, it was completely illegal. So that's why people were horrified and shocked, and they called on me to start a petition. Actually, it wasn't my idea. And I copied and pasted my op-ed that I wrote into there, and it went viral. And, lots of things have happened since then, but that's kind of how it started.
Yeah, that's amazing. We're gonna get to some of the things that you guys accomplished last year. Curious kind of what you guys are working on now, and just kind of how people can be involved in support. That's fascinating to hear. The third most influential tech company. I mean, you rattled off a few there with Amazon. I mean, you would think that they would be near the top, and as you're saying that, it's like I've been on YouTube for a few years now. Just in this last year, we've really kind of dialed it down and seen a lot of growth there. And I know with YouTube, like if I post a video that's got music playing in the background that I don't own rights to, my video gets flagged. If somebody pulls a clip from one of my videos and reposts it to their channel, I'll get a copyright notification. So the tech is there, the artificial intelligence to flag some of these things. So I guess my question is with this site and knowing that these child videos are have been uploaded, has this just been negligence on the side of Pornhub with lacking the right type of technology? Or I mean, there's got to be a way that there's an artificial intelligence that can identify some of these things in the video. Like, why hasn't this been put into their software?
Sure. It's kind of the key word you said was knowing, and the fact that they knew and they've known that children, mostly underage teens, have been exploited on the site. But the Sunday Times investigation in 2019 said they found dozens of illegal videos within minutes on Pornhub, some of children as young as 3 years old. So, and you think about trafficking victims and knowledge of Pornhub of what was going on. And that was years ago that those victims were reaching out to Pornhub saying, I was coerced, I was tricked, and I was forced into this situation. And my videos are all over your site. Please take them down. Victims begging for the removal of their trafficking crime scenes to be taken on Pornhub for years. And so they've known it. Now, in spite of knowing, they had a system where it was set up for exploitation. Like I mentioned, that you can anonymously upload sex videos to this site with no verification of age or consent. But beyond that, in order to try to detect content or review content, they had, I was given internal documents by Pornhub moderator whistleblowers, internal company documents that showed that they had only under 10 moderators per shift looking at content on Pornhub. And, compare that with Facebook, that's not a porn site, that is, they had 15,000 moderators. But even if Pornhub had 15,000 moderators, there's no way a human can guess accurately the difference between a 15-year-old nude body and an 18-year-old nude body on a consistent basis. It's impossible. It's also impossible for them to be guessing and correctly, the difference between somebody having rough sex and somebody being raped. You can't guess that accurately. And they knew that also. So when you talk about complicity, when you think about knowledge, I believe it goes way beyond just pure, negligence or accidents to a place of full well knowledge and complicity.
Wow, so 10 moderators. I mean, with millions of videos. I don't know if this information would be available to you. What percentage of the videos, or maybe it's an estimate on your part here, is this unverified? Because you have a segment of the porn industry that is
It was
produced. It's
80%.
it's
It was
80% of.
80%. So 80% of the content on Pornhub was unverified, where they could not prove with any certainty that these were not children or victims of sex crime. So that's why in December, after the credit card companies removed their services from Pornhub, because the New York Times released a groundbreaking expose called The Children of Pornhub that caused shockwaves around the world. 4,000 follow-on articles came after that one. And Visa and MasterCard and Discover said that they were not going to allow their cards to be used to process for Pornhub. And just days after that, in under 24 hours, Pornhub deleted 10 million videos, 80% of the site, which was their unverified content where they had not verified age or consent. So an enormous amount of content on these sites is completely unverified that these are not sex crime scenes.
And there's no way for somebody to know. And I'm not here advocating for the consumption of pornography. I mean, everybody listening knows where I stand on that, the work that we're doing. But there's no way for the person watching to know whether or not this has been unverified or verified or what's going on. It's not like, when it's posted, like you watch a video on YouTube, you know who the channel is. Like it's not the same in this case.
Well, yeah, I mean, it goes it goes deeper and it gets worse in that, Pornhub actually was giving users a verification check mark. Like, we all know the social media verification verified account has that blue check, right? And they
Mm.
were giving the blue verification checks to users only having to show a username written on a piece of paper and a photo. So no ID, no age, no consent, none of that. And they were verifying users. So, you had completely unverified users. And then you had these quote unquote verified users, blue checks, that had just this joke of a process. And so as a consumer on Pornhub, you could go in there and you could even think you're watching a verified video, but really there was no real, reliable, meaningful verification of age or consent, even in that case. And so, yeah, when you go on these sites, it's when you see a girl with pigtails and braces, which is a popular genre of pornography, is the teen genre. It's likely that you're going to end up seeing, amongst other videos that are actually 18-year-olds that look like 15-year-olds, actual 15-year-olds as well.
Yeah, when we had Natasha on, who runs Redefining Refuge, this is back in September, I believe, of last year. She had mentioned that I think in 2019, the number one search term on Google was teen porn, and then she shared with us how some of the producers they'll plant certain stuffed bunnies or certain visuals, kind of understanding the psychology behind how the brain works. And then I don't know if you've seen the movie Social Dilemma. I think they need to make one on porn, because this is a tech company. I don't think it's a porn company. It's a tech company that understands how the brain works, and they lead you into the next video and the next video and next video. So maybe kind of speak to somebody's out there like, I'm not into the teen stuff. I'm not into rape. I just like casual sex, casual porn, whatever they want to define that is. How could they still be contributing to the problem, through things like data mining, ad revenue, like just all these other ways that porn is sucking you dry without you even knowing it?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting question. I mean, first of all, realize that porn has been controlled by a monopoly by a company called Mindgeek. So Mindgeek is the company that owns Pornhub. But they also own, some have estimated, up to 80% of all mainstream online porn. So, they own 160 porn sites and brands, including Playboy, for example, and Twisties, and Tube8, and RedTube, and YouPorn, and GayTube, and I could go on and on and on. Browsers and mofos, and so much of the porn industry has been rolled up into one company called MindGeek. And so when you participate in the MindGeek network, when you participate in one of their brands, whether that is content that you think is verified or not, you are giving revenue to this mass exploiter, to what I call a mega sex trafficker. And that happens primarily through advertising. The CEO of Pornhub recently testified before a Canadian Parliament when they were called to be questioned, to answer for what they've done. Previous to that, they've been hidden in the shadows. Even their VP uses fake names in the media to hide himself. Hiding himself and his identity. At the same time, I'm being contacted by, for example, a 15-year-old who's suicidal because the videos of their abuse are on Pornhub, and in the title is her real name, her city, and her school. Yet the executives of Pornhub have been hiding. I mean, even just today, it's breaking news that the real secret shareholder of Pornhub, a man named Bergmer, who's been, again, in hiding. Nobody's known who he is, and they haven't even known his name until December. Finally was located and found. But anyway, so when you participate in monetizing and providing revenue for this company, you think you're watching free porn, but it's highly monetized. And where I was going was a CEO who was called into question said that 50% of their revenue comes from advertising. So you can see a video on Pornhub of a rape or another form of non-consensual content, but you'll have ads all around the video. You'll have ads before it, in the middle, after. And that's how they make an enormous amount of profit. But they also make money through premium memberships and the monetization of user data. So everybody who goes to Pornhub, whether they know it or not, their data is being, discovered and monetized. So whenever you participate in this network, you participate in the abuse.
Now, who's advertising on these videos? I mean, I shared that we're using YouTube. If I put a video out there, and I mention, how to overcome porn or use the term porn reboot or nofap, like YouTube is going to flag that. It's not a monetizable video. And obviously, I know, porn. That's specific what they're doing, but the companies have to understand. I mean, obviously, with all the awareness that's been brought up. So, what are these companies either thinking, that I'm gonna drive money here, or are they just once again just chasing the dollar bill? Like, who are these companies?
Well, interestingly, there were some mainstream companies advertising on Pornhub in 2019. For example, Heinz and Unilever. I mean, major uh,
Wow.
companies, and they got called out and they apologized. This was at the same time that the Sunday Times did that investigation I told you about, where they found children as young as 3 on Pornhub. But so, there's not many very mainstream brands currently advertising on Pornhub. They're probably not that insane to do something like that at this point. But there are companies. Mostly, it's interestingly, erectile dysfunction pills and drugs are advertising on Pornhub, as well as sex dating sites are advertising sex games, and a lot of marijuana companies. One of their big advertisers that you'll see there really often is called Weed Maps. It's this company where that's their business. So those are the advertisers that are currently on Pornhub.
Got it. I heard I listened to your testimony. I don't know if it was with Congress, but you shared a lot of real life stories. And I know I didn't send you anything to prep for this today. Can you share one or two maybe shocking victim story that you've heard? I mean, not that I not for shock appeal, but to really kind of drive this home to the listeners of what what happens to the people being trafficked. Like
Yeah.
let's make it real to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've seen and have been in contact with victims that are on the spectrum of abuse. I call it a spectrum of abuse and criminal content that's on these mainstream sites like Pornhub and like X videos as well. Let's not let them off the hook. There was a recent New York Times expose on X videos as well. And many of the victims that I've spoken with were not only abused on Pornhub and Mindgeek sites, but also on X videos and XNXX, which are owned by the same company. But these videos range from situations of trigger warning for everybody. FYI, if you have kids that are within hearing distance of this, or if you're sensitive, please turn it off. But kids as young as prepubescent, 9, 10 years old, being anally raped on Pornhub, you can hear them screaming. To situations where you have an adult who is completely drugged, passed out to the point where the perpetrator is able to tickle them and poke their eyes and things like that to show that they're completely unconscious and violently assault them. And to women who are being tricked and coerced and trafficked, and women who are being raped where they're audibly protesting, covering their face, showing they don't want to be recorded, to revenge porn situations, which, a lot of times people victim blame revenge porn victims. They say, well, you shouldn't have done that. You should have recorded yourself. But, people, we need to have compassion for these victims too, because I've spoken to those victims, and what happens to them is devastating. One victim, she was doing well in college. She had just purchased a house. This happened to her where a video of her was non-consensually distributed on Pornhub, and it just devastated her. She fled the country. She abandoned her house. She left her school, and she just told me that she had dreams of being successful, but she said, maybe in the next life I can be successful because I don't know when this video is going to resurface. And it was like her life was completely handicapped and debilitated. And so, and then all the way to people who don't even know they're on Pornhub, that they were victims of spy cams, where actually they're planting spy cams in the toilets of public restrooms of girls at prom, of teens at prom, at dressing rooms and public locker rooms and things like that. And women and girls are being recorded, and even men who don't even know that their videos are on these sites. And then they find out one day, years later, that their videos were being distributed like that. So that's kind of the spectrum of abuse.
No, absolutely disgusting. I mean, I don't think there's any other word. You mentioned that you've been fighting, trafficking for 15 years now. Curious, what has been kind of your experience with seeing, maybe the evolution or kind of escalation of this? You talked about the tech side, third most powerful company. I think we're in the early stages. Gary Wilson talks about this in his TED Talk, the porn experiment. What we're dealing with today. I'm 37 years old, and I struggled with porn as an addiction for close to 20 years. But what I first saw when I was a young kid is not what the young kids are seeing today. This 160 years of accessible hardcore streaming technology, it really does something to the brain. We've had a lot of neuroscientists on there understanding how it really warps you, how it really hijacks, your reward center kind of begins to really reshape your perspective of sex. And, I speak in front of, organizations and trainings for human trafficking awareness companies. And my role there is as the porn addiction expert, trying to bridge the gap and understanding that somebody doesn't wake up one day and decide, okay, I need to go purchase a sex victim. It always starts with consuming porn. That porn addiction always has an escalation effect where you need more hardcore, you need more extreme. So what have you kind of seen over 15 years with how this has grown and evolved?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, with the exploitation of trafficking, I think, we become a digital world. We become a digital society where, so much of our lives is online that, you think about like just the distribution of images and how easy it is to record and distribute images and videos. And what we've seen in the evolution of sex trafficking is that, yes, it's still continuing to happen in red light districts and homes and in these physical spaces, but though often those crime scenes, I call them, of rape and trafficking and abuse, are being recorded, and they're being monetized and commercialized online, and like I said, in some of the most mainstream websites. And so it's not just on the dark web that this is happening. This is 2 clicks away from every single person who has an iPhone, for example. It's also 2 clicks away from our children. If you think about that, it's horrifying. The fact that an 8-year-old, there's no barrier to access to the world's most mainstream porn sites like Pornhub and Xvideos. They don't even have an RU18 click-through button that any 4-year-old could navigate through. There's literally no barrier. And when you get on that site, when you get on the homepage, these videos autoplay. So you have, however many thumbnails autoplaying. And when we think about the fact that so much of this are not just, stage violence or violence that's happening in a studio, but actual real rape, trafficking, and child exploitation crime scenes that these children are viewing as their introduction to sex, as their intro to sexuality, to their sex education that's shaping them and forming them for life. And in that way, it's a form of secondhand sexual abuse for children to be accessing these sites. But we've seen the evolution of trafficking, where one thing that's important for us to realize when you think about trafficking is that by law, any minor, any child that is used in a commercial sex act is a victim of trafficking. Every single video on these sites is highly commercialized. They're making hundreds of millions of dollars off of these videos. And so when you see a minor on one of these sites, they are a trafficking victim. And that's the basis for multiple lawsuits that have recently been filed against Pornhub and Mindgeek. Also, when you see a woman or a man who is in a sex act online that it was induced by force, fraud, or coercion, they are also trafficking victims. So I think that's just important for us to realize, is there's been an evolution of trafficking.
Yeah, so all of these, voyeur, the voyeur ones that you were mentioning, like there's, that's non-consensual. Wow.
Yeah. And so, I think the awareness around this is so important, because probably like you and like so many others, they don't realize that, these sites are not just, it's not just that it's violence, or it's not just that it appears to be underage, that there's actual real underage victims, rape victims, trafficking, a bunch of criminal content on these sites, and they need to be held accountable. There was a study recently done. It was by the Journal of Criminology, I believe, in Britain. I think I'm getting that name right. And it was a few weeks ago. And they found that, they looked at the main tube sites, X videos, X Hamster, and Pornhub. And they found that 1 in 8 videos on the main page, so this is the home page, this is the page that you get to when you're a child and you Google sex or you Google porn, whatever, you get onto the front page. And that 1 in 8 of those videos indicated sex crimes, non-consensual sexual crimes.
You said they're tube sites, and one of the things that was jumping out on kind of the top 10, big things for last year, was how Pornhub changed their business model and no longer ceased to exist as a porn tube site. What does that really mean? Like, what is a tube site, and how are they? Is it a workaround that they're trying to do, or what does this really mean? Like they
Sure.
changed their business model.
Kind of the idea of the tube site is this user-generated content model where anybody can upload, and therefore they get millions and millions of videos uploaded every year. And they really upended their business model in December by requiring the uploader of the video to be verified. So they have to verify their age and their ID. However, it did not solve the problem, because in many cases we even know about, the uploader is the trafficker, the uploader is the abuser. They're still not reliably, consistently verifying every single individual in every video on these user-generated sites. So so the porn tube model is like the YouTube of porn, where anybody anywhere around the world is able to upload content onto the site.
Maybe this is just my ignorance, not really being the smartest person, but with all the evidence kind of, glaringly obvious that there's crimes. Like, I've been following you for a year. There's been success, there's been wins, 10 million videos taken down. Like, how has it not just been shut down completely? Like, glaringly obvious, like, crimes against humanity.
You need to go to Pornhub.com. There's a seal there that says the DOJ, the Department of Justice, has seized the site. That's what you would expect in this kind of a situation.
Yeah.
I believe that will happen. I think it will happen. I think it's just a matter of time, that we just keep the pressure on, that we don't relent, because really it's justice for victims. And you think about other perpetrators like Harvey Weinstein, for example, when he was found out that he was raping women, he wasn't allowed to just say, I'm sorry, I won't do it again, and like avoid jail. Like, that's not how the law works. Sorry, Pornhub and your executives, but that's not really how this works. So, keep the pressure on. We want to see criminal investigation and prosecutions. Just on Tuesday, there was a joint letter from 732 organizations and survivors to our U.S. Congress demanding a criminal investigation and prosecution of Pornhub, Mindgeek, and its executives. So, and the same thing happened in Canada. And so we're seeing, it's slowly but surely we're continuing to take steps. And, for these victims, I always say this line, I say a slap on the wrist is a slap in the face for these victims. And that's the truth. You can't just be able to say sorry and move on, because these victims can't move on. Their lives are destroyed by this predatory company. Many of them are suicidal. They face severe depression. They can't hold a job. Some of them can't go out of their house because they're afraid to look around the grocery store and think of who saw their abuse. And they call it the immortalization of their trauma. I think it's important to understand the consequence for these victims, that it's not only that they had to be raped, but then that rape is being used on the world's most mainstream sites for profit and pleasure, that it's being downloaded and then redistributed again and again and again. They're obsessed with trying to find their videos of abuse and trying to take them off the internet. And they say, long after I'm gone, people will still be getting profit and pleasure from the worst moments of my life. And that's a form of torture for these victims. And so because of that, the consequence for Pornhub has to be severe, and Mindgeek and its executives. So we just want to keep up the pressure. And I really do believe that real justice means the site is shut down.
Yeah, and right there with you. It's something I really think, will I hope and pray, that we do see the day where, like you said, you type it in the Google search bar and it's like the site has been, ceased. That's real PTSD there that these victims are going through. Like, you're saying it sticks with them for their life. What can people do? What can, the average person hearing this, maybe they're familiar with you already. If not, we'll get them linked up to the petition. I don't know if you still need signatures on that. I know it's, you've garnered over 2.2 million signatures on this petition. What can the average person do to be involved? I mean, is it sending letters to their, to their governor? Is it picketing in front of, Congress, or like, what somebody's like, I'm ready. Like, So where can people help? What can somebody do?
Mm-hmm. Well, so first of all, very basic, awareness is the doorway to all action and accountability. So you can't hold someone accountable for something if you don't know it happened. So people need to share this information. People need to know about this injustice of what's happening on the world's most popular porn site and others like it. Obviously, go sign the petition. We need more signatures. I mean, people wouldn't imagine what a signature can do. The amount of media that has been generated just from the sheer numbers on this petition have been really astounding. And so, we want to see that continue to grow until we reach the goal. We haven't reached the goal yet. Pornhub has not been shut down. Its executives have not yet been held fully accountable. And so we want to see that. So you can go to traffickinghubpetition.com. You can contribute financially if you want to at the Justice Defense Fund.org. We're supporting and empowering survivors to pursue lawsuits against these predatory companies. And so you can do that at justicedefensefund.org. And then you can, talk to your politicians, talk to your lawmakers. They're there to respond to you. They work for you. You can contact them and say, I want to see legislation to prevent this. There's a few pieces of legislation that are coming up in the US that have been introduced and will be reintroduced to provide age and consent verification for these sites. And so, look into those. One was called SISIA, it's the Stop Internet Sexual Exploitation Act. Another is called the Earn It Act, that enables companies like Pornhub and other tech companies that are responsible for allowing child sexual abuse to be on their site for victims to be able to hold them accountable. Support that legislation. And then speak with your wallet. Don't go to these sites and support these abuse and exploitation empires. Just say no, and that's what they care most about. That's what I've realized, is that trafficking is about finances. traffickers are exploiting because they can make money doing it. And that comes down to the consumer. So stop consuming from these sites that are obviously enabling and profiting from criminal sex acts.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You mentioned that you've spoken with, some internal, call them whistleblowers, I think is the word that you used. Um, have you had conversations with people that, when this really kind of, rose to the surface and it was made public, with your work or anybody else, like what was the conversation kind of inside the walls of MindGeek? Like what were the higher ups, executives sharing, if anything, with the employees? How was it kind of being, oh, you're seeing this on TV and maybe an employee brings a question like, what is this? Or like, are we really doing this? Like, what was that conversation like inside the walls there?
Yeah, I don't know too much about that internal dialogue, but I do know I was told that, for example, the management would send an email to the employees saying it's not true. That, even until October of 2020, those who spoke for the company, who use fake names in the media, FYI, have said that this is all conspiracy theories. They refuse to acknowledge the problem, and internally, I'm sure that they were doing the same thing. They're just saying this is not true. Uh, and so, but yeah, the truth has definitely come to light.
Yeah. And what, if any, pushback to you, whether it's been, personally or with the organization, whether that's coming from, MindGeek or hired people of MindGeek. I don't want to say, it's like mafia style, any of that stuff, but have you had pushback from them or even from the public? Like, I mean, massive, acceptance, 2.2 million signatures, but what has been the opposing
Mhm.
side said?
Yeah, it's interesting you said that because one porn producer who reached out to me early on called MindGeek the MindGeek Mafia. Those were her words, actually. Uh, and interestingly, I mean, they don't operate like a normal company does. They operate more like a criminal organization than anything else, in my view. For my part, I've been, issued death threats. By supporters of MindGeek and Pornhub online. There's been doxing, there's been hacking, smear campaigns, attempts to defame me, discredit me. I mean, even recently, I was called as a witness in front of the Canadian Parliamentary Committee investigating Pornhub. And Pornhub's CEO and COO sent a personal signed letter to the committee trying to discredit me and tell them not to allow me to speak. So it goes to the highest levels of the company that they have been attacking me and trying to silence me, trying to discredit me, and other advocates, not just me, other advocates, and also victims who have been coming forward too.
Wow. And you said that was the MindGeek Mafia. That was somebody in the industry. You said porn producer. So even within the industry, like they're kind of blacklisted. Like, I
Yeah,
mean,
they told me that they're afraid to speak publicly, that, most of those in the industry appear to support holding Pornhub accountable. If you go on like industry forums, for example, and hear the internal chatter, they're like, they had it coming to them. They've been exploiting people for so many years, not only victims of rape and trafficking, but those in the industry themselves. They've been allowing stolen content to be uploaded. One porn producer who I talked to said that she would spend 2 hours a day just scouring MindGeek sites trying to take down her stolen content that was being put up there. So they do not like Pornhub and MindGeek within the industry. But when you try to speak out, what I was told was that you get blacklisted, like you said. So because they own a monopoly, because they have so much control of the industry, you really, I mean, if you put your neck out there, you're going to be in trouble. As far as your business goes, they're really afraid and threatened by that. And so what you hear publicly is mostly what I call the MindGeek surrogates or the agents or those who speak for MindGeek on behalf of MindGeek and Pornhub.
got it. Wow. How deep can this can this potentially get? So let's say it gets to the point where, Justice Department steps in, ceases the site. Now they have all this data of everybody that's watched these particular videos. Like it's all there. How liable is the potential consumer of some of these videos?
Well, that's an
Like
interesting
what the potential?
question. Yeah, because it's a pretty clear cut crime to possess child sexual abuse material, which is formally called child pornography. And even victims themselves cannot possess their own abuse material. That's how strict the law is. Their lawyers can't possess it. Nobody can possess it. And so, I was recently made aware of a man in Michigan who apparently is in jail for downloading from Pornhub a video that was of a minor that he says he didn't know was a minor. And he's put in prison. So, awaiting trial. So, when it comes to the consumer side of things, I think people better be pretty careful about where they're going, because it is a pretty strict and straightforward law with regard to possession.
Yeah, and I mean, hopefully everybody listening, or at least the regular consumers of this podcast, I'm sure we're going to get some new. Hopefully, we get a lot of shares with today's episode, but most part, I feel we're building a community of people that are not consuming this. It's just something that as we're talking, I'm like, there's got to be a link to consuming this. If the site is going to go down, like I'm responsible for what I'm watching, and then definitely like the download. That was something I didn't even realize was a case. So there was a point where you could really pull any video, like you could save any video off
Mm-hmm.
of
Yeah,
off
there
of
was a
Pornhub.
download button that would actually transfer that content from their servers onto anyone's device, and that you could own it, and possess it, and for free. And sometimes you could pay for it if it's certain premium, or model hub content. But yes, but even without the download button, people can screen record anything, and then have the video on there, regardless of whether there's a download button.
Wow, this is eye opening for certain. Um, is there anything that maybe we haven't addressed? Whether it's new news or upcoming things or anything that just me kind of getting wrapped up in this conversation. Like I've kind of forgot to pull out of you. Like I want to make sure we really drive everything home here.
Wow, there's so much, right? So many angles to this, and yeah, I feel like we've covered quite a lot of it. The big point, just driving that home, that sex trafficking is not something that's just happening in seedy brothels in some dark alley in some other country. Um, Now, in a digital world, sex trafficking is happening literally 2 clicks away from everybody on our smartphones with access to mainstream World Wide Web, not the dark web. Obviously it's happening on the dark web, but it's happening mainstream World Wide Web. And I think that, we just need to be really aware that if people care about the issue of sex trafficking and child sexual abuse, that we care about what's happening on these mainstream porn sites, and that we hold these companies and perpetrators accountable. And the only way we can hold them accountable is if we speak up and we don't stop. Like, don't, get tired of it. Just keep at it. And then eventually, I believe that we will see justice for victims.
Yeah, I think it's bringing it back to the Einstein quote that I tried to open up here with today, like realizing like it's not the people doing the harm, it's not the people doing the evil, but it's on us, the ones that can have a voice, that can put our money behind things. So I
Yeah.
want
And
to make
you
a
know what?
slight pivot, and I want to.
Also, just really quick, just be encouraged, because,
Mm,
who would have thought a year ago, when we first started using the Trafficking Hub hashtag, and when the petition just went out, some people had contacted me kind of mocking me, like, do you really think that Pornhub and Mindgeek are going to pay any attention? Like, do you realize how big they are? Do you realize how powerful they are and how much money they have? Like, do you even think this is going to do anything? And now fast forward, a year later and just see what's happened. And I just sometimes look back in awe and say, wow, like this is the power of people coming together.
Yes.
Millions of people putting in their voice, hundreds of journalists writing and lawmakers speaking out and NGOs coming together and organizations and survivors coming forward. And when you have something like that, where we all do our little part and come together and just to look at the results, and it's astounding to me sometimes what's happened.
Yeah, it's truly remarkable how powerful people can be individually, and then more importantly collectively. And that's an amazing segue here, because it's something I wanted to ask you about. Here you are, you're an incredibly strong woman. You have all this courage, to take on this company, so kind of going off the topic of trafficking here, and maybe just speak to all the listeners out there. Maybe there's somebody hearing this, and like they have something kind of tugging on their heart right now. There's a problem in the world that like keeps them up at night. There's something that they really want to, fix. They really want to get involved, but that voice inside of their head it's always reminding, you're just a small individual. Like, you can't make real change in the world. You can't do this. Like, so and so is massively all this money in the world. So where did you maybe find, the courage or strength, or, what could be a words of encouragement outside of the trafficking, like I said, and just maybe
Yeah,
speaking to
sure. Just
somebody
on a
that wants to
personal
get involved in
level.
something, make a
Yeah.
change in the world? Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
so many different issues, and trafficking is not the only issue out there, or the only injustice, or the only thing that needs to be remedied. And there's so many different things, and even, from interpersonal things that could just be in your own family that you feel that you need to handle, or even bigger, in society issues. But, for me, what I have felt is that this has been a calling for me, that this has been something that, I can't put down, that I feel compelled to address this issue. And what I've kind of kept as a motivating force is that I'm accountable to take action on that. And it's not really about the success of it. It's about the action of it. So for me, the word that I keep coming back to is be faithful. Be faithful to, what you feel is your personal assignment to make change in the world. And regardless of your success, it's not really about being successful, it's about being faithful, in my opinion. And so that way, when you get to the end of your life, you could say, did I do what I was supposed to do with my life, to make the change that I was supposed to make in whatever sphere that is, and whether it's in your family or society? And you could say, yes, I did. I tried my best. And like, that's all you can do is try your best. A lot of times things are out of your hands. For example, virality, it's not something that you can control. With the Trafficking Hub campaign, it's not like I can push a button and say, go viral. Like, it's not in your control all the time. All you can do is keep on keeping on with your message, with your mission. And regardless of success at the end of the day, at least you could feel satisfied that you did your part.
So powerful. It rings so true to, the message that I try to, create here. Like, we were all, used assignment or calling. We all were placed with something here on our heart that calls us. And in addition to that, given a particular set of skills, a unique set of skills, like Liam Neeson says in the movie. But it's combining those two, and that's what you were put on this earth to do. So I love that so much. Layla, I want to bring it home here. Lila, I'm sorry, I called you Layla.
Okay.
Lila, I want to bring it home here. I want to, we have one final question that we end every single episode with. So I'll get to that here in a minute. But I want to give you a chance to kind of share with, where people can find you. We mentioned the Trafficking Hub site. We mentioned the Justice Defense League. So we'll get, or Justice Defense Fund. We'll get all that stuff plugged down, but where can people connect with you? Whether it's it's online socially, or the best way to get in contact with you, if they want to support the work, or get
Mhm.
involved. Yeah, just kind of
Yeah.
where's
So, I
where's
mean, if you want to follow the movement and what's going on with this fight against Pornhub and Mindgeek, I mean, the most uh, obvious place for me is on Twitter. I'm always updating on Twitter. My handle is at Laila Mickelwait, as well as Instagram. at Laila Mickelwait and Facebook. So you can find me on social media at Laila Mickelwait. You can go to lilamickelwait.com as well to link up with me there. I have a contact form. And then justicedefensefund.org is also where you can go to support my my nonprofit that I started.
Awesome. Yes, and we will get all that drop down in the show notes. Anything, kind of on the, up and coming with you guys, anything that you could share? You had the top 10 wins from 2020. How are things kind of progressing this year?
Yeah, well, I mean, we see this Canadian investigation escalating. It's been really interesting to see the executives called, to be questioned, and the way that they've answered, and then the way that they called the heads of different agencies and police agencies and child protection agencies. And what we found was that even though they knew about so much child exploitation going on the site, that they had made zero reports to relevant authorities from 2007 to 2020. When you think about complicity, when you think about how much abuse that they've enabled to continue, but I see it as trying to hide, trying to protect the brand, by not reporting these instances of child abuse and that they were aware of. And so that's a crime in Canada. There's something called a mandatory reporting act where you are required by law to report, and they haven't. So they've broken the law. They've done the same thing in the U.S. And so I'm really anxious to see, criminal investigation and prosecutions happen, and just you really see the executives held accountable. And then we have civil lawsuits. So let's just see how those play out. Class action lawsuits, lawsuits on behalf of victims, hit them where it hurts, and see those lawsuits progress. And so, I see this as kind of the giant has fallen to the ground, but it's still very much alive. And I think, real accountability is going to come through the criminal prosecutions, the civil litigation, and the legislation that will come about next.
Yeah, absolutely. And in addition to all this, I mean, everybody, like I've said multiple times here today, knows where I stand on the consumption of porn. Like at least if you maybe don't have the financial means, you're like, I'm not ready to kind of get involved in government. You can play your part and just not contributing to it, not consuming it, not allowing them to get your data, not allowing them to get revenue from your time spent on the site. So Laila, I'm so incredibly grateful for your time here today. Thank you so much. We have one question. It's going to kind of once again be a little off topic from what we discussed, but the show is called The Superhuman Life. The genesis of this is really, it's been my transformation, my own personal life story, from somebody that struggled with not just porn addiction but multiple addictions for a very long time of my life. There was a point where I did, I gave my life to Christ, and that is a very fundamental part of my story. And it was in doing so that I realized that we were all placed on this earth for a very specific purpose, like I mentioned before. But then also in doing that, like, we have to play our role, we have to do our part, and I think it starts with kind of taking care of our physical being. This one vessel that we have. So I have a background in fitness and bodybuilding and all these other things. I don't want to go too off topic here. So when I talk about living a superhuman life, for me, it's about a belief system. It's understanding that you were given a purpose. There's a calling on your life, but then you have to do the work. You have to take care of your physique. You have to fully optimize it. And when you combine those two together, that's what I envision as living a superhuman life. So I like to get the guest take on this as we end every show here. So Laila, how would you define living a superhuman life?
Wow, that is such a big question. My goodness. I think that a superhuman life is a life where on your deathbed, you don't have regrets. It's one where you can look back and you can think, I did my best in all these areas, in my relationships, with my family, with my calling, with my finances, and that you can look back and just and not feel a sense of regret, but feel a sense of peace about the way that you lived your life. And so, one exercise that seems a bit morbid, I think, but something that I do just to kind of ground myself in that, is to imagine, if this was my last day, or if this was my husband's last day, what would I regret? Like what would I do different? And then try to do it, like try to do it right now, so that at the end of the day you don't have that regret. And so yeah, I guess that would be one big piece of what I think is living a superhuman life.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I gave a very similar response to a question that I was asked with people that were struggling. And it's like, envision your funeral. What are the conversations going on in your life celebration? Like, what are people sharing? What do you want them to share about you? And if you're not pursuing those things, if that's not what's pulling you out of bed, then you're misaligned. And just take some time to get aligned and clear on that. That's an incredible answer. Thank you so much. Guys, we appreciate you, for hanging out with us today. If you're watching here on YouTube, once again, thank you. If you haven't done so yet, tap that subscribe button. And then whether you're on Apple or Spotify or Podbean, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. More importantly, guys, this is something that I ask of you every single episode. It's to share these conversations. A lot of the guests that we have on here are talking development, talking growth, talking mindset, physical fitness. Those are for you. I think this one, like Laila has said, we need to get this word out there. We need to spread this awareness. So I'm asking you guys out there, I really want to get this in as many people's ears, in as many people's eyes as possible. So I'm asking a personal favor, if everybody's still with us here, to share this episode with as many people as you possibly can. Throw it in an email, CC everybody. If you have an email list, you entrepreneurs out there, send it out to your list as kind of a goodwill email, because this is a global issue. Laila and her team and organizations are doing incredible work, but we need more. She needs
Yeah.
more. And Laila, any final words for the listeners and viewers here today?
Use the hashtag Traffickinghub when you share, if you can. That way, the whole movement can be aware of it. I can share it as well. I just keep using it, keep spreading the word.
Yeah, hashtag Trafficking Hub, guys. We appreciate you for tuning in. Laila, I'm really excited to continue to follow you and be involved. And I'll fight my side of the fight over here, and we'll do as much supporting and raising awareness as I possibly can. So for you guys out there, thank you again. For Laila,
Thank
Frank, Rich, we
you.
love you. We'll see you
All
next week.
right. See ya. Bye.